preach. So, any comment before we move on to verse 13?
The problem Jesus was having here was that the people he talked to were trying to circumvent.
I didn't think to mention that.
And so that was really the motivation for the teaching anyway.
He wanted them to say you could get rid of her because she burnt the biscuits, wasn't he? That's yeah. Hey, man, you got to go. Because they could do that under the old law. Isn't it funny, though, Jay, how they showed up at every corner? Here they go. You think about the multitude of people who were following him. And look who's Karen's comment, the woman always walks 10 steps behind. Well, the Pharisees were 10 steps behind, micromanaging everything he did. And they... Not at all. Exactly. Agreed totally. So, was it... Kenneth, can you tell me why they kept hanging to their law and not worried about what God said and wanting this so bad?
Because they had changed it to fit what they wanted.
Exactly.
And they wanted to keep that because they had made themselves some authority that God didn't give them.
Agreed. Now we're going to go on to 13 through 15 in Matthew. It says, "Then there were brought unto him little children that he should put his hands on them and pray. The disciples rebuked them." Okay. That he should put his hands on him and pray. And the disciples rebuked them. But Jesus said, "Suffer little children and forbid them not to come unto me, for such is the kingdom of heaven. And he who laid the hands on them and departed thence." That's out of the King James. I would rather read something out of that's out of the King James. I would rather read out of the New King James. So I'm going to start with verse 13. "Then the little children were brought to him that he might put his hands on them and pray. But the disciples rebuked them. But Jesus said, Let the little children come to me, and do not forbid them, for of such is the kingdom of heaven." Okay. I had something happen to me yesterday with Michael. This is your golden opportunity because we're talking about this and I already studied it. A good friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, he is not a member of the Church of Christ, but his daughter is. And she goes to church not very far from here. And his daughter just had a baby. And we just pulled in there and we were cleaning fish. And out of the blue, he looked at me and he said, "Michael, y'all don't christen, do you?" I said, "No, Ron, we don't." And I've named him now. But anyway, I said, "Do you want me to tell you why?" I said, "Boy, Jay, here you go. You got that phone with you." So I said, "If you want me to tell you why, let's go to 19 and start in 13, 14, and 15. And I let him read it. And I said, and after he read it, he looked at me. I said, and then ain't his official word now, but I said, "There ain't no need for it, according to that, is there?" And he says, "Well, it's just what we do." I said, "I understand that, but the Bible, it ain't according to what you do or I do. It's what you read right there. Jesus didn't see any need for that. Heaven was theirs anyway." So I thought that played right out just
the way it was supposed to be.
yes.
Mark 10th chapter, I always go to this, verse 13. Jesus is basically the same thing. Jesus blessed the children. But what follows it, I think, is the key. He's giving the information on why he did that. And he talks about a rich young ruler. And the rich young ruler had been following the 10 commandments. But was he doing what he was supposed to do? Jesus is talking to
Good point. Good point. Anybody else along these lines?
I think it's pretty much cut and dried there. The thing that I think Michael
Needs to learn is, boy, we're right about this, and y'all are definitely wrong.
just let them read it. Why we do
This because there ain't
there ain't no need for it. Let's go on to a really interesting subject, which hits me right in the face. We're going to start in chapter 16. It's verse 16. We're still in chapter 19. And this is what Sammy just got through talking about. So it just
a lot of this dovetails. Each subject from one to the next sequentially dovetails. Now behold, one came and said to him, Good teacher, what good things shall I do that I may inherit eternal life? So he said to them, Why do you call me good? No one is good, but one that is God. But if you want to enter into life, keep the commandments. And he said to him, Well, which ones? And Jesus said, You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness. Honor your father and mother. And you shall love your neighbor as yourself. That's it. But, well, what did Matthew chapter 5 in the Sermon on the Mount that James just got through talking about? It said you can't murder, but you can't even hate somebody in your heart. But he just quoted the 10 Commandments to him. Well, here's what he said. The young man said to him, All these things I've kept from my youth. What do I still lack? And here's the rub. We've all heard it before. Jesus said to him, If you want to be perfect, go sell what you have and give it to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. And come follow me. But when the young man heard that saying, he went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions. Okay. We'll stop right there in 22 before we keep reading. This reading goes on all the way through 30. So I'm going to lead this with is he telling it, do we have to sell everything we have? You better know he does. He knew he went, in other words, he went right for the bullseye on this, right? He said, Get rid of it and come follow me. He wanted him to not think, he wanted him to live his daily bread one day at a time, and that was it. And he knew he couldn't do that. But now reading on, it says, with God, all things are possible. Go ahead. As we read on, we're going to hear, have you ever, and I'm not saying this, I mean, this is the truth. Some people just, oh no, there ain't no way he's going to heaven. He's got too much money. That's not true. And we're fixing to find that out. Because the subtitle of this is, with God, all things are possible, when we get on the New King James. I think, well, that's a bad thing to say in life, I think, because it don't matter what I think. But do we get into that? I just caught myself. I think it don't matter what I think. With God, all things are possible. Then Jesus said to his disciples, Surely I say to you, that it's hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And again, I say to you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than through a rich man through the enter the kingdom of God. Now, hold it. Jay, I'm going to put you on the spot because I know you've done a lot more studying than I have. Oh, I do. Now, I've heard it's the needles in this big gate that a camel, not the actual eye of a needle. Where do we get that from? Does anybody know? I'm not anybody, because I don't.
It's a gate that was in Jerusalem. It was very small and short.
because we don't have gates or camels, you know.
Yeah, I don't see anybody riding a camel out there this morning to church.
So I like to make the analogy of you can't put a basketball in a Coke bottle
Okay.
or something simple. And he's just illustrating how difficult it is.
Right.
You know, another woman I heard say, that camel had to get down on his knees to crawl through that opening in that gate. And we've got to get down on our knees to realize that we need
Exactly. And it may take a situation that puts us on our knees. It really, I've been there. I mean, but I guess the question is to me, why does it take that to get you to pray harder than you've ever prayed before? And sometimes it does.
kind of hard for a rich man to give up those riches.
But what he says here, it's not impossible. You can use it in a good way to serve others. And I thought about this. I'm picking on my wife today. But in 2000, y'all remember
Before they did Richmond Road, it really fixed it, and it's still
congested, but it was really congested in 2000 and the early 2000s. You'd go up that ramp and just sit there and not go anywhere. And we were there in 2000. Oh, it was cold. And there was this man and woman standing out there with the sign, she's pregnant and all this, and we got to help them. And I said, well, we can give them something, but you don't know. So we have to there's a fine line with using what we've got to help others and knowing, but we're called upon to help. I think this is another way it slices into it, is if you've got more than the next guy and he needs your help. And that could mean taking a chance on putting in a word for him. Hey man, I'm really looking for a job and I need your help. I need your word. Would you?
The thing is, we're told not to judge. And, I'm not prone to give those people money, but there are those that do, and you can't judge those people, even though we know the history of them. We know there's some, or maybe most, who do it as a sideline, or as a main job.
Oh yes.
But there may be that one there that's an angel that you may need to give money to.
That's why most of the time I'm not Pat Michael's not. Most of the time we went to my grandson's birthday party in Long last week at CC's Pizza. There were some people there that told him no, and I knew what Karen wanted me to do. And he was saying, I'm from Houston and I'm here, and they were in the parking lot. And of course, his sob story got to me.
But a lot of times what I do is, personally, what I do is I go buy them something to eat.
Well, that would be, yes. And I was in a hurry and I didn't, got me. Anyway, in verse 25, we move on. When his disciples heard it, they were greatly astonished, saying, and this is a good question, who then can be saved? And this really settles the whole issue. But Jesus looked at them and said, with men this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. So he settles it right there. You can have money and go to heaven if you use your money in the right way. So then Peter answered and said to him, see, we have left all and followed you. Therefore, what shall we have? So Jesus then said to them, surely I say to you, that in the regeneration, when the Son of Man sits on the throne of his glory, you who have followed me will also sit on the 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And everyone who has left houses or brothers or sisters, here we go again, see this, our sisters or fathers or mothers or wife or children, or lands for my name's sake shall receive 100-fold and inherit eternal life. But many who are first will be last, and the last will be first. Anybody want to comment on that?
that's a ton of stuff there.
What does he mean by those who've left their family and their land and all that?
Again, it's not about poverty that Jesus is commanding, but an attitude of sacrifice.
It's other things.
Besides money here too also, isn't it, Jay?
Yeah, I mean,
You are sacrificing.
you know, or whatever. And again, it's not, he's not requiring us to cut off those relationships or give all our money away.
That's right.
It's the attitude with which we approach those.
See, and I'm going to be honest with you, I've read this 100 times, but it did not hit me about everyone who has left, in verse 29, left houses, our brothers, our sisters, our fathers, our mothers, our wife, our children. Have people left people like that to follow the Lord? Family members?
So there's other things besides money here is what we're talking about.
A lot of times, it's, they left us. Because we're Bible believers and Christians, some of them don't believe the same thing we do.
That's true. Any other comments before we move on?
When it boils down to action, it's what you're willing to do.
There, go ahead. That,
To be open-hearted with it and help it, not begrudgingly.
there you go. Or it's, Janet, you
Bring up such a good point. Or it's, boy, I'm gonna do this because this is what
I need to do. That's what you're saying. And he can't be displeased with that attitude.
Abraham didn't have to sacrifice Isaac, he just had to be willing to.
That's exactly right, Milford,
And that hand was coming down when he stopped him.
wasn't it? It was in the motion.
It comes down to love. You know, money is not the root of all evil.
Nope.
The love of money is the root of all evil. The love, you know, of your family. It said, if you put mother, father, son or daughter, or anything before God, then you're not pleasing in God's sight. And if you put money, it's the same way. If you put money before God, and that's what that rich young ruler was doing. He was putting the love of that money before the love of God. And we can do the same thing.
Exactly. We can. Exactly. Any other comment before we move into verse 20?
Verse 20
Is another, it's
really along the same lines.
about the workers in the vineyard and the hired laborers. Now this one is really harder before we get into
Into it to me, because this talks about Michael being a drop gut, and I have been guilty. Before I even
start, I'm on kind of a prerequisite to be a fancy word to what this chapter's about. I always use the analogy, and Amy's sitting right there, she knows. And the way they did it was bad. They would call everybody up front to give them an award, and everybody, you know, 50% of them got money and the other 50% didn't, and the other 50, including me sometimes, what I did, and I did, would just leave there ready to just shoot out of that room like a rocket. That is the wrong attitude. And you know, maybe you do know that part of this runs into envy. But anyway, we're going to start with this. The way I picture this, there's a modern day would be, have y'all ever heard of these migrant workers? They pile in front of the employment office because they know they're there anyway, and the dude comes along in his truck and he says, okay, how many of y'all want to go work? And they're already there looking for a job and they need something right then, so they'll hop in the truck and go with him. But anyway, we start 20 verse 1. For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. Now when he agreed with his laborers for a denarii, I looked up minas this morning. I did not look up denarii. Anybody know the value of that? Is that a Spanish term? Is that I don't know what a denarii, I may have to do a little more studying on that, and I didn't look it up. For denarii a day, he sent them into his vineyard, and he went out about the third hour and saw others standing idle in the marketplace, and said to them, you also go into the vineyard, and whatever is right I will give you. So they went. Again he went about the 6th hour and the 9th, and did likewise. And about the 11th hour he went out and found others standing idle, and said to them, why have you been standing here idle all day? They said to him, because no one hired us. He said to them, you also go into the vineyard, and whatever is right you will receive. So when evening had come, the owner of the vineyard said to his steward, call the laborers and give them their wages, beginning with the last to the first. And when those came who were hired about the 11th hour, they each received a denarii. When the first came, they supposed that they would receive more. And they likewise received each a denarii. And when they had received it, they complained against the landowner, saying, these last men have worked only 1 hour, and you made them equal to us, who have borne the burden and the heat of the day. But he answered one of them and said, friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for the denarii? Take what is yours and go your way. I wish to give you this to the last man the same as you. It is not lawful for me to do. It is lawful for me. Is it not? He's asking a question. Is it not lawful for me to do what I wish with my own things? Or is your eye evil because I'm good? So the last will be first, and the first will be last. For many are chosen, for many are called, but few are chosen. Any comment on that? Would you be angry if you'd stayed there 8 hours and the other dude worked an hour and he got the same as you?
Oh, yeah, we run the union office and file unfair labor.
Exactly right. That's what I thought. Hey, man, this really, if you get down to brass tacks, it ain't right. But this goes to Ephesians 2, 8 and 9 about grace, doesn't it? If we see somebody come in here and we've heard the story, we think they're not worthy of salvation. That is wrong, because they are. That's what they're really getting at here, if you think about it. Anybody want to discuss that on grace? He's trying to say grace is the same for everybody. That's what the gist of the story is. And what about the last will be first and the first will be last there? Does anybody want to elaborate on that? Is that okay? It doesn't matter who you are or what you are. You're all going to be the same in heaven. Is that a way to look at it? Your position of prominence here in this world is not going to make a dime's bit of difference on the last day.
I think the spiritual comparison here could be someone that's saved at an early age and labors in the kingdom for a whole life. And someone else hasn't, very late in life, is converted and becomes a Christian, and you can say that ain't fair. They're getting the same thing I got, and I worked my whole life towards this. They're just as undeserving as we are.
You're exactly right.
Undeserving as they are.
And so I think it's one little four-letter word called pride. Maybe haughty. So
That's,
it does. You said it exactly perfect. Okay, so we talked about the rich young ruler. We talked about the laborers.
Jesus,
In chapter 20 and 17, he talks about his death and his resurrection. And that is a very important one here. And Jesus, going up to Jerusalem, took the 12 disciples apart in the way, and something just happened here. It's still on. Okay. And Jesus, going up to Jerusalem, took 12 disciples apart the way and said to them, behold, we go up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be betrayed unto the chief priests and unto the scribes. They shall condemn him to death, and they shall deliver him to the Gentiles, and mock and scourge him and crucify him, and on the third day he'll rise again. So what he's telling them, he's going to die, right? That's basically all he's doing here in Matthew. And it gives the same accounts in Mark and Luke about his resurrection. For some reason, it never really, I'm giving an opinion here, it never really hits him and soak in till that Garden in Gethsemane night. And they still went to sleep. He does. I don't think they get it. And please, if y'all disagree with me, please tell me. I don't think they get it that his kingdom is not going to be to this earth till it just finally just goes down. That's the human part in them. Any other comment on that?
They didn't intend on letting him get hurt either. They were going to defend him.
Peter cut that guy's ear off, didn't he? You're exactly right. Okay, this one in Matthew 20, let's go to verse 20. This one interested me very much as we moved on. The subtitle for this is Greatness is in Serving. Then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to him with her sons, kneeling down and asking for something from him. Now I want to stop right there. She was kneeling down to Jesus and asking to let her sons have a position in his kingdom. In this day and time, it was a custom when a lady, especially an old one, leaned down and she went right at his feet, the way it describes this, that it was, you kind of had to acquiesce to it. That was the word. And I know there's more renowned Bible scholars in here than I will ever be, so I need some help with this, but this is what I think's going on here. He said to her, "What do you wish?" She said to him, "Grant that these 2 sons of mine may sit, one at your right hand and the other on the left, in your kingdom." But Jesus answered and said, "You do not know what you ask. Are you able to drink the cup that I'm about to drink and be baptized with the baptism that I'm about to be baptized with?" They said to him, "We are able." So he said to them, "You will indeed drink my cup and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with, but to sit on my right hand and on my left hand is not mine to give. But it is for those for whom it is prepared by my Father." And when the 10 heard it, they were greatly displeased with the 2 brothers. But Jesus called them to himself and said, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who are great exercise authority over them. Yet it shall not be so among you, but whoever desires to become great among you, let him be your servant. And whosoever desires to be first among you, let him be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many." So, anybody want to talk about what's going on here?
She thought it was an earthly kingdom.
Exactly right. And she wanted them to be served, and she didn't have any idea that Jesus wanted them to serve others. Am I right with that?
You know, it sounds to me like these 2 brothers kind of put her up to asking Jesus. Because you get down to where he answers, he said, "Don't you know that," he said to them, "You're able." He asked the question, are they able to?
Are they up for it?
Are you able, he was talking to the brothers then, are you able to drink this cup that I am? He wasn't talking to her then, he was talking to the sons. It sounded like that kind of put her up to asking Jesus.
Right.
You know, and a lot of people today think they need to go to the mother of Jesus to get something,
They do?
just like they were talking to the mother to get Jesus to answer.
That's another thing that I noticed, and y'all, why the other 10 get mad? That they thought these 2 men, they are going to get a special place in his kingdom. So if it can happen to them, it can happen to anybody. Isn't that a good thing to remember, that envy can really grab us around the throat? Quick, fast, and in a hurry? Folks, I volunteered to teach this class. That sure don't mean that it means that this has been good for me to know that, boy, Rainey, you've been guilty of this more than once, a bunch of times. So if somebody that worked as hard as these guys did got mad about somebody getting something they didn't, it could happen to us too.
The humanity from that.
I agree. We might try to do one more. Is there anything else that needs to be said along this line on this subject? We go now to Jesus heals the blind man. That's about 5 verses. We're going to try to cover that and then stop and go on for next week. As they went out of Jericho, a great multitude followed him. And behold, 2 blind men sitting by the road, when they heard that Jesus was passing by, cried out, saying, "Have mercy on us, Lord, O Son of David." Then the multitude warned them that they should be quiet. But they cried out all the more, saying, "Have mercy on us, Lord, Son of David." So Jesus stood still and called them and said, "What do you want me to do for you?" And they said to him, "Lord, that our eyes may be opened." So Jesus had compassion and touched their eyes immediately, and their eyes received sight, and they followed him. The crowd was hollering, telling them to shut up. But Jesus stood up in front of that crowd and did something. I think here I go again with that thing, but the thing that stands out to me is Jesus had compassion. He had compassion. Did he not have compassion when all those people came to hear him preach and they didn't have nothing to eat? He said, "Man, these people have walked a long way. We got to feed them before they walk back." So I think, as he did a lot of this healing, he had compassion on people that had suffered. I think that's the key takeaway from this last subject, that wherever he went, even with the crowd telling these 2 dudes to shut up and sit down, he said, "No, I'm going to prove something to you, that if they want this, I'll give it to them." That's going to wrap it up for this week. We'll start next week with Matthew, I believe that is, if you want to look ahead, we're going to start with Zacchaeus. That is in Luke 19, 1 through 10. Thank you for being so attentive, and thank you for your comments. Luke 19, we're going to start in chapter 1, and if you want to read ahead, you can. So we'll start with Zacchaeus, and we're almost to part 2.